Okay, looks like it started, and it says it's being recorded right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay, just need to wait for people to join.
Okay, I see we have 13 participants right now.
Mhm.
Right, that's good.
All right, it's 10 o'clock. I will get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Using SEIS to Generate Reports. My name is Lawrence, and I'll be hosting this workshop session. Before we begin, you could see my slide deck over here. Please click, actually, sorry, let me share the slide deck. So you can click on the link, or you could use your phone and scan the QR code to sign in. Hi, Suga. What's your question? Suga, you raised your hand. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, Mr. Chai, right? Can you hear me? I cannot hear you. I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I had myself muted. Yes, yes, Joe, I can hear you.
Huh. I still can't hear you for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. So we can't really see ourselves, right? Am I right? This is kind of new to me. I'm a little anxious about how we're gonna be able to communicate. And the chat we won't be able to use. And there's also, I couldn't see the question box. The first session, the welcome section, there's a question box we can actually type in there. This one doesn't have it. So how do we communicate other than raise our hand and talk to you?
Okay, I just changed the chat box to everyone, and I will share the slides again.
All right, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, if
that's
anyone has
wonderful.
any questions, please use the raise hand feature, and when I see that, I will allow the speakers to unmute themselves.
Thank you so much,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Tai.
Hi, Min Jong, do you have a question? All right. Looks like
Oh, I think we still can't type in the chat.
Benjamin, do you know how the attendees can enter into the chat box?
Let me look into it.
Yeah, because I switched it to everyone and it should work. But I don't know. Yeah, this is a new Zoom platform. It's different from last year.
I changed it to everyone just now.
Okay, I see someone, Henry typing works now. Great.
Okay, all right, great.
Okay, I
great.
see people typing in. All right. Okay, I will share the slide deck again and the link in the chat box. Okay, great. I see people saying they can copy and paste the link. All right, thanks, Claire, for the confirmation. Okay. Yes, you do need to sign in again. Specifically, you need to choose this specific workshop in the drop-down area. And all the workshops, we're asked to include this sign-in, so they can see how many attendees are joining each workshop. Lillian, do you have? Oh, do you have a SFUSD email? Okay, let me see. Oh, it says sign in only once. All right. Okay. Yeah, I just clicked on the sign in. It looks like I don't see my workshop. I'm not sure why they asked all of us to include the deck, but it looks like if you sign in already before earlier this morning, if you signed in already this morning, then you can skip this sign in again. All right. Okay. So if you already signed in this morning from the opening, then you don't need to sign in again. You can skip this step. Okay, let's begin this workshop. And again, welcome to the Using SEIS for Generating Reports workshop. And in this workshop, I'll be going over how to run reports in SEIS and explain the features that everyone can utilize. I'm not sure if you can see the attendees' faces or videos. Benjamin, do you have the answer for that?
For the attendees, no, they don't see it. They don't see other people.
Okay, thanks, Benjamin.
Yeah.
Okay. A self-introduction. My name is Lawrence Sai. I'm a data analyst within the special education. Specifically, I work with the psychologist team. I've been using SEIS for 5 years, and I use SEIS daily to generate reports. And so I'm very familiar with this process, and I'll be walking through this workshop, everyone. Later on during this workshop, there will be a live hands-on session, so everyone can actually log in into their SEIS account if they have an account, and we'll be generating reports. So you get a hands-on experience. If you have any questions regarding SEIS accounts, please email the SEIS help team. I'm not an administrator for SEIS, so if any questions, please email seishelp@sfusd.edu. Okay, and the goal of the workshop is to become familiar with generating SEIS reports and knowing where to click and where to run the queries. Oops, sorry. And in SEIS, there are generally 2 types of reports, and we'll be going over them specifically. There's the service report, and there is the what I call it the roster report, and I'll explain in detail very soon. And SEIS reports are helpful. Mainly, there's 2 types of users. You're either an administrator, like myself, or who work with an entire school site or entire district, or you're a provider. Let's say you're a special education teacher or a speech language pathologist. So, for example, if you're a special education teacher, you want to see your roster of your special education students along with their data points, such as their grade, their disabilities. And these SEIS reports will generate this kind of data for you to view. And if there's anything wrong, you can go in and make corrections. Okay, and as earlier I mentioned, there are 2 types of SEIS reports. And the first type report is what's called the current services report. And the current services report details what kind of special education services each student is receiving, such as if they're receiving the intensive individual service, or if you're a speech language pathologist, they'll detail what kind of speech services they're getting and the duration and frequency. And you could see the bulleted points in this slide. Does anyone have any questions so far, or anything you want me to repeat? Feel free to enter into the chat box. All right, no questions. Oh, do the fields include special factors? I don't believe so. One of the limitations of SEIS is it does not include all the different data points, unfortunately. No, goals, unfortunately, is not one of data points that can be queried, unfortunately. Okay, later on, we'll see the Excel spreadsheet. When you generate a SEIS report, generally most users, they will download as an Excel sheet. Okay, we're getting more questions. Are these reports that we generate for the suggested uses? There's many type of purposes, and it really depends on the individual. The ones I mentioned at first are the general reasons why people would use the reports. There is a pre-save feature. I'm not exactly sure what you see, but I believe there are reports that are pre-saved, and I think it depends on the user's account. The question is, can you see the comment section in the SEIS report for services? Yes, you do see the comment section. for the current services report. Question is, when we get a new student, is there a way to see what was filled out by the previous teacher in its transportation section? Yes, you do see, let me see, the comments in transportation. I believe that's a separate field that you need to query for. Yes, I will be going over the steps to generate reports, and also in the PowerPoint slide that I showed earlier. In one of the later slides, there is direct link to a Word file that details how to generate the different types of reports step by step. And I'll be going over that later on in this workshop. Question is, will we see accommodation services such as paraprofessional services? It depends on the category of service, and the current service report will actually detail all the services each student is receiving. So if a paraprofessional service is within that service category, then you would see that. All right. So when you do generate a current services report and you download it as an Excel file, these are the main fields by default that you will see. And the ones highlighted in yellow and circled are the main data points which most users will be focused on. So you can see in column E and F, those are the codes and services for each student. And you can see the start and end date for the specific service. And you could see on the bottom area, you can see the duration and the frequency of the service. So for example, the top row is showing that a student is receiving service 90 minutes daily, and also specifies the location of the service. The second report is called the student report, or I call the student roster. And this report does not specify the services our students are receiving, but it gives you the more general information of each student that you queried for. So for example, you can see in the middle, it says you can query for the student's disabilities, the student's eligibility status to see if they're already eligible for special education or they're pending due to reasons such as they're still working on their assessment. And you can also see their SPED pathways. And there's a lot more data points you can query for, but generally speaking, the green areas, the green highlights over here are the main data points most users would query for. And the main purpose of the student report is to see if the student roster is accurate. For example, if you're a school administrator or you're a principal, you might want to download the list of students within your own school to make sure that they are indeed captured and information is correct for your specific school. And or if you're a special education teacher and you're a case manager, you can query for all the students within your caseload and make sure that their information is accurately captured. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, or you want me to repeat anything? Feel free to enter into the chat box. Okay, no questions. And here's an example of the student report that you download in Excel. So this is a screenshot of what it looks like in Excel. So you can see it does not list the specific services that you saw earlier, but instead it lists the specific data points for each student that you queried for. So in this example, the red highlighted field, it's queries for the special education pathway. And you could see to the right of it, you can see the student's grade and their disabilities. We have a question. Question is, is the student report a pre-built report, or can users add fields for EL status, for example? Yes, there is a default query, and this is it shows what the screenshot right here. That is the default data points. But of course, you can also specify the specific categories that you want to query for, and we will be going through that pretty soon. So some caveats that I want to specify. Whenever you query for a SEIS report, whether it be the student roster report or the current services report, it's really important to understand that all the data that you query from SEIS is based off the future IEP, not the current IEP. And this is a structure that the SEIS team implemented. And so you need to really be aware of that. So whatever's in the future IP, that's where you'll be querying from. So for example, if you have a IP that was affirmed, let's say 2 months ago, and then someone edits something in the future IP for that specific student, the data that you will download is from the future IEP. So that's a nuance that it's really important to understand. And there are data points in SEIS that are updated nightly with Synergy, and specifically those are data points that include the student's school and grade. So if a student switch schools, then during the same night, if Synergy has the updated school, it will automatically update into SEIS. But the nuance about that is only eligible students who are already eligible for special education have their school and grade updated nightly. So if a student is pending, and this pending students, let's say, is from last school year, then they'll still have the last school year's data. And the third and last point is any changes made to your save search features or automatically saved. There's no option to say to click on save. So any change you make will be automatically saved and overwritten. And I'll be going that in detail later on today, so everyone understands the exact detail about that. Are there any questions or anything you want me to clarify? Please feel free to enter into the chat box.
Hi, Mr. Tai.
Oh yes, hi Joy. What's your question?
Yeah, because it's too much work to type. You just mentioned when the student is transferred or changing school or transition, for example, from middle school to high school, and you will automatically get updated to synchronize from Synergy to SES, right? But why is it that we have to manually, as a case manager, to go change? I forgot.
Oh, what happened? Dropped out. I'm not exactly sure what Joy's question would be, but I think it might be related to requesting students to be added to your caseload or transferring to another case manager's caseload. For changing case managers and providers, it is not an automatic process, and that will need to be updated manually. Hi, Joy. Would you like to finish your question? In this slide, which I shared, you can also access these links. So these are the specific links for the step-by-step detailed documentation in the second and third link. Generating a current services report and generating a student report. And the first link is the SEIS login link. Oh gosh, someone's saying the links don't work. It works for me. I just clicked on it. So I'm not exactly sure why it's not working for you. Yeah, if you're actually clicking on the screen that in Zoom, it's not a link screen. You have to go into the slide deck, which I shared earlier. I'll share it again. I need to go on that specific slide and click on the links from there. We have a question. The question is, when you get a new student, is there a way to see what the previous teacher wrote in the student's transportation eligibility determination bit? As far as I recall, I believe there is a area where you can query for the special education transportation comments. I'm not sure if it's the exact same category that you're looking for, but I remember there is a area where you can see the comments for special education transportation. Lillian, do you have a SFUSD account? Because the slides I shared is only accessible through a SFUSD email. Oh, okay, understood. Okay, Lillian, I just granted access for view access for your account. Okay, and now we can dive into the hands-on workshop for generating SEIS report. So if everyone, if you already have a SEIS account, please log in right now. I will copy and paste the login link into the chat box right now. If you have any issues with your SEIS account, please email the SEIS help team, which I'll type into the chat box right now. Okay, I'm gonna give another minute for people to log in into their SEIS account. Okay, if you don't have a SEIS account, unfortunately, you need to email the SEIS help team, which I just have your email entered into the chat box. But in the meantime, you can observe the live session. And this session is also recorded, so later on, you can access the recording. Okay, does anyone need more time to log in? Please enter the chat box. Okay, looks like everyone's logged in for those who have an account. Okay, I'm going to switch screens. I'm going to share my SEIS screen, just a moment. All right, does everyone see my SEIS screen? Okay, great. Okay, so when you log in, this is the main dashboard screen that you see, and I'll briefly go over this. You could see in the follow-up area over here, You can see how many students have IEPs are pending or amendments that are not yet affirmed. And you could also see the meeting alerts area. You can see just clicked on something. You can see the upcoming triennial evaluations or any pending initial evaluations. So this is the dashboard general overview. So to dive in now into our workshop, in order to start queries, you go into the searches area right over here in the top area. So it hits searches, and you see there's a drop down. We'll go into the share searches later, but for now we want to hit searches and then new search. Okay. Does anyone have any issues navigating to this screen in the search area? Okay, I don't see anyone asking for help. So once you are into the search area, by default, this is the student roster. And depending if you're a site administrator or if you're a service provider, you'll get a different list. Generally speaking, administrators have their entire school site of all the students, and service providers usually have only their students within their caseload. So you can see these are the default fields that are queried. So you have the student name, their birth date, who's the case manager, and the school of attendance. So you could see it's pretty limited right here. So if you want to add more fields, like for example, I want to know the student's disability, for example, to create more fields to query, you go to the column options over here. You can see in my mouse. So I click on column options. And this is where you type in the fields you want to query for. For example, I want to query for the student's grade. So I'll click on the select columns for report area, and I click on the empty area. And you can see this drop down out of all the different query fields available in SEIS. So I can type in grade, and I select grade level. And let's say I also want to query for students' disability. So I type in disability, and it'll give me disability 1, which is the primary disability, and also I want to query for the secondary disability. And once I have the desired data points, I hit OK, and it will run the report. And you can see now it has the desired data points that I requested. Does anyone have any questions or anything you want me to repeat? Feel free to enter into the chat box. Okay, no questions. Oh, okay, here's a question. Is it better to run a report with multiple columns or one at a time? Generally, I believe it's better to have multiple columns because of it. It seems that my understanding is, are you asking for just one, like querying one column at a time? Generally, I prefer multiple columns so you could see more data points, but I'll show how to download it as an Excel so you can tailor the viewing to your desired level. Okay, those data points don't appear in your dropdown. Okay, okay, looks like someone's asking for me to repeat. Okay, I'll repeat this one more time. So once I'm in my dashboard, I go to searches, drop down over here in the top left area of the screen, and I hit new search. And once you're in there, by default, this is the student report field. And the data points you can see are pretty limited. So to query for the data points you have in mind, you click on column options right here. And then once you have the pop-up screen and column options, you go to the select columns for report area into this blank field right here. You click on it. And then this is where you type in the desired data points you have in mind. So at first, I want grade. So I type in grade, and I select the grade level. And then also for the primary and second disabilities. And once I have the desired data points, I hit OK, and it will rerun the report. And once you finish running the report, you should see your desired fields when you scroll to the right. Okay, there's a question saying, when I generate the report, some students show up multiple times. Is that because they have an amendment or multiple service provider? Okay, for that question, if you see student multiple times, it's a duplicate. You shouldn't see that for the student roster. And if you do, the reason is because they have multiple SEIS accounts, and that needs to be addressed as soon as possible, because it's really important that all the files and documentation is uploaded to the appropriate SEIS account for the student. But for these services roster, you will see multiple students because each service field that each student has, they have their own role. So you will see multiple students in the current service report that we'll be going over next. Okay, let me see. Shannon says, I do not see services under the dropdown. You should see service under the dropdown. Which dropdown are you looking at, Shannon? There's another question. Are the format codes for EO proficiency status different from last year? How to add the criteria for that is a little bit more in depth, Karine. Unfortunately, I won't be going over that. But yeah, that's a little bit more complicated because it involves the administration side to create a custom field. That's my understanding. But you can reach out to the SEIS team for your question. Another question is, which do I select to show the FAPE services? That is the current services report, which we'll be going over next. Okay, Margaret saying, I do not see the new report under reports on the homepage. Yeah, within the homepage. Okay, you got it. Okay, great. All right. So the next step is, okay, we have a question. Add fields. Manage to know. Yeah, Karine, that is a little bit outside the scope of this workshop, but you can ask the SEIS team and they can clarify, because my understanding is the SEIS, they updated some changes and they're the ones who will know in depth about the answer to your question. Okay, for services, we'll be going over that next very soon. So we'll be covering that in detail And yes, you can query for specific services. We have a question. It's saying, if you have students that are listed, which are in high school and no longer middle school, how to delete them? For that, you have to use I believe it's the request changes feature within SEIS for all users. What that is, it generates a ticket to the SEIS team, and they'll request, for example, you to add or remove students in your caseload. Okay, we do have a relevant question. If you have access to whole district, how do you limit your search to some schools? I'll be going over that at the very next step. But before that, I just want to show how to download the reports into Excel. So once you have your desired data points, like for example, I want to know the students' grades and disabilities, I can download this into an Excel. So to do that, you go to this drop down over here. By default, it shows print. And instead of print, I want to download the data. So I hit on download data over here. And once I have that, I click on go, on the screen go button over here. And once you hit go, and once you finish downloading, you should able to open the area where you download files from your browser and open the Excel file. And I'll briefly share the Excel file. Moment. Okay, so I download the Excel file, and this is how it looks like on my screen. So you can see it's the exact same data points, but with Excel, you can do your filters and your sorting from here. So you could tailor the data to your specific needs. So for example, I want to look for students who have only autism, and I can filter for that. Hit this filter button, and I select autism. And I could see all the students have autism as their primary disability. Does anyone have any questions or anything you want me to repeat regarding downloading into an Excel file? Okay, someone said they missed how to download the file. Okay, I'll repeat that one more time. I'll go back to my SEIS screen. Okay, so to download the results of your query, you go to the drop down over here. By default, it says print. So you click on this drop down where it says print and select download data. And once you select download data, you click on this green go button over here. And it will download the data into your area or your folder where you download files from the internet browser. Okay, there's a question regarding, is there another way to have students added or removed from your SEIS list? Yes, the default route is to use the SEIS student change form. And unfortunately, during the beginning of school year, the SEIS team has to process thousands of requests, so there will be a delay. But as someone else said, you can also email your content specialist or administrator to process your request. Actually, I do believe the new policy is for the content specialist to process the request because the workload for change request forms is pretty overwhelming for the SEIS team. Okay. Okay, it looks like there's no questions anymore regarding downloading into an Excel file. So the next step that we're going to mention is how to specifically using the filter area within the SEIS search. Someone earlier said, how can I specifically query for a specific school or list of schools? And in order to do that, you go to the criteria panel on the right-hand side over here. So this area functions as a filter. So for example, if you're a school administrator or you're a district administrator, you will specifically look for certain schools. This is the area where you use. Or if you're a speech language pathologist and you will look for specific services only, you also go into this area. So this area is also very useful. So in order to add a filter, you click on this add green button over here. So left click on the button and it will generate a new dropdown for you to specify. So for example, I want to look for a specific school. I click on this dropdown and I enter school of attendance. And once I enter school of attendance, they'll ask for what schools am I looking for. So for example, I want to look for, let me see. Well, I'm using a demo account, so they're fictional. So for example, I look for a school called Demo Harrison and also a school for Demo Roosevelt. And you can select different schools of your choice. And this filter is also has multiple layers. So for example, I want to filter for not only specific schools, but also specific services. And I add another layer of filters. So I hit add over here and look for service. So a service code, for example. And I want to look for students who have for specialized academic instruction. And once I have the desired fields, so for example, over here, I want to look for students who are only in these two school sites, Demo Harrison and Demo Roosevelt, and also students within those schools who only have specialized academic instruction. So once I have those query filter fields entered, I hit search. And SEIS will query for those students and the results are shown into the left-hand side over here. So now it shows only the students in the schools that are requested and only students who have the specialized academic instruction service. And there's many different filter categories that you can look for. There's a lot of them. So for example, I can also query for only disability. So disability 1 is also known as the primary disability. So if I want to have students that are only, for example, emotional disturbance, then I query for emotional disturbance and hit search. And these two students are the only students within my caseload that are within these two schools that have specialized academic instruction and have emotional disturbance as their primary disability. Okay, let me see, look in the chat box. Let me see, someone said, your download open in numbers. I believe if you're using a Mac, you have to either open as an Excel file, so you have to long press it and open as an Excel file, or you have to go into your settings and have Excel as the default program to open spreadsheets. Someone asked, can we use filters to check for EL status? Can you specify, does EL stand for English learner? Is that what EL stands for? Because there's different acronyms. Okay, English learner. Yeah, we can search for that right now, actually. So I hit a new query field for filters, and I look for English learner, and there is. So as you could see English learner. So you have to specify whether you want them as a yes or no. And let's say I hit yes, and that's where you query for their status as an English learner. Okay, we have another question. Is there a way to search for a eligibility category as primary or secondary disability? I don't believe there is a specific, what do you call it, a feature for that, but the workaround for that is you might want to query for both disabilities. Let's say, for example, I want to look for students who have emotional disturbance as primary disability, and I have disability 2, and I enter the other disabilities that you have in mind. For example, intellectual disability. But from my experience, if you want a more detailed list of disability, it's actually best not to use the filter feature over here and just simply use the column options for disability, for primary disability and second disability, and using Excel to query from there, because there's quite a exhaustive list of disabilities. Yes, someone commented that when you're defining your column options, you can click and drag within the box and it will rearrange the order. And yes, that is true. So I'll explain in more detail over here. So for example, you can see that the layout is I have the student's SEIS ID first and then last, first name, date of birth, case manager, and so forth. And within column options, I can rearrange that. So for example, if I want to have the student's disabilities to be shown first, then I can click and drag the fields. So if I left click on my disability one, I drag it, and you can click and drag and rearrange it. And once you have your desired arrangement, I hit OK. Let me clear this search feature. So now you could see disability is shown right after the student's names. Okay. And there's one more thing I want to go over for the criteria feature, which is also known as the filter feature. There is a exclude criteria option, and I'll go in depth into what it means. So for example, if I'm a school administrator and my personal use, I should have all the students within the entire district. So if I want to have exclude certain schools, so for example, if I want to look at high schools, I want to look at all the high schools. So instead of querying one by one, specifying every single high school, I'll just exclude certain high schools. So for example, let me enter the school of attendance. And so I could see all the different schools here. And so for example, if I want to list all the schools, but except for certain schools, I hit exclude criteria over here. So I hit that checkbox, and I look for the specific schools that I want to exclude. So for example, I want to exclude schools such as Demo Harrison or Demo Lincoln. and make sure your exclude criteria is checked, and hit search. So this list over here has all the students in every school except for the 2 schools that I mentioned. So there's another way to filter for different data points. So instead of specifying what you want, if your list is smaller and you want to only exclude certain data points, then you use the exclude criteria. Okay, if someone asks, how do I download the reports? So to download reports, you go to the upper area drop down over here, and by default it says print. So instead of print, you want to make sure that you want to select download data. So hit on the drop down over here and click on download data. And once you have download data, you hit on go, and it will download the spreadsheet to your download folder within your computer. Okay. Okay, so this covers the student roster. And next, we're a little bit running short on time. We're going to cover the services. So in order to go to services, you need to go to column options again. So click the column options at the top of the screen over here. And you could see it says student report. So that's the default report. But if you want current services, you want to select current service report. And you can see there's other types of reports as well. There's ESY and there's other ones. But for our purpose, we're going to hit the current service report. So you select current service report and select OK. And from here, you can see the specific services that every student has within your caseload. So you can see the first student over here, he has a specialized academic instruction service, and it will detail the start date and the end date of the service, as well as the frequency. So for example, this student is receiving 15 minutes one time daily over here. So this report is very useful for a service provider. For example, if you're a speech language pathologist, or if you're a school psychologist. And you could use the exact same column options we went over earlier. For example, grade, disability. And also you could use the exact same criteria filters. For example, if I want to filter for students of only specialized academic instruction, I can select for service code, and select specialized academic instruction and hit search. And so now you can see, I see only students who have specialized academic instruction. And from here, you could view your roster, or you could download into a spreadsheet and tailor it from there. All right. Does anyone have any questions or anything you want me to clarify or repeat? We have 3 more minutes left. Yeah, I understand this workshop is there's a lot to go through. So this workshop is recorded, and you will have access to this workshop later on. And there's also within the slide deck, there's the links to the step-by-step instruction documentation. Okay, we have a question: how to download as a spreadsheet for Google Sheets. If you want to do that, unfortunately in SEIS you can't directly download into Google Sheets. So what you have to do is you have to download as an Excel file first, and then from there you upload it to your Google Drive, and you can open it as a Google Sheet. Another question is, can I clarify how to filter in Excel again? I don't see the dropdown. Okay, let me just switch to Excel very quick. Okay, so here's the Excel file. It really depends, like if you're using a Mac or which version of Excel you're using. But for most users, the filter, there's different ways to do it. So you could click on the filter button over here on the top of the screen under Data, make sure in the Data tab. And for me, it's under Data tab, and hit Filter. Or I believe you can also right-click on the column and then hit Filter from there. So you could see I can filter by value. Oops, let me do that. Is the transcript being recorded available for download? I don't know the question for the transcript. Benjamin, do you know if the transcript's available for download?
Sorry, I don't have that information.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if the transcript is available for download, but the whole recording is available for download. Question is, how do I get to the spreadsheet? It depends where you download the spreadsheet. Everyone's different. So generally, it's the exact same area where you download files from the internet browser, and from there, that's where you access it. And unfortunately, it's different for everyone. Okay, any more questions? So to access the documentation for generating SEIS reports is in this slide. There's two links: generating a current service report and generating a student roster report. So you can click on those links and it'll lead you to a Google Doc or step-by-step detailed instruction. Benjamin, do you know how the attendees will access the recording to this workshop?
I'm not sure. Let me check. It will probably be available on the website. Let me check, okay?
All right. Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. Seems to be no more question. I will also share the link to these slides again. And the Digital District Day teams are asking for feedback. So you can either use your phone and scan the QR code in this slide shown on the screen, or you can click on the link within the slides for your feedback. All right, and I will enter the link to the slides one more time into the chat box. All right. All right, thank you for attending, everyone. I hope you found the workshop useful. And if you want to see more details, you can either access this recording again when the links are shared, or you can access the step-by-step instructions in the links within the slides. All right. Benjamin, do I close the meeting or do you do that? How does this work?
I think you can close it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for attending,
right.
everyone. Okay, I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and please take care during this challenging time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.